Welcome back to the Ignore the Template podcast. This is going to be a weird one. It's usually the only FPL podcast on the entire internet hosted by me. However, this is going to be the only Liverpool podcast on the entire internet hosted by me because I'm reacting to this mess that is Liverpool Football Club. I just finished watching the Brighton match, and there's just so much to talk about. I've been wanting to talk about this for a very long time as a Liverpool fan. This may not appeal to everybody, especially if you're here for the FPL content. That will be back after the Game Week 31 wraps up. But I wanted to do this little special episode, not to further my content creator career, but because this is just fun for me, and I need some sort of creative outlet to just dump all of my ideas. And I'm curious if any Liverpool fans or Premier League fans resonate with any of this, because there is just so much wrong at this football club at the moment. And I just wanted to outline everything and make sense of it. Hopefully that can give me some clarity. Hopefully that can give you some clarity. So again, FPL content will be back after Game Week 31 wraps up. But this is just going to be for the Liverpool guys. So if you're curious in either understanding how we got to this miserable place, or on the flip side of it, if you are relishing Liverpool doing so poorly, this should be a good podcast for you. Let's get into it. So I'm going to use Understat as a little bit of a backdrop. Most of this is going to be ranting and raving. However, this was the perfect example, I think, that I could possibly think of to just underline all of Liverpool's issues in one match. So let's just quickly talk about the Brighton Liverpool match first. Then I want to go through the context of like kind of the background stuff that's not necessarily Slot's concern, but I think ultimately we need to make a decision on what we do with Arne Slot. And you could probably understand already by the tone of this video what direction I think I'm going to go in, but I'll reserve that to the very end. So Brighton 2, Liverpool 1, and that really just did not tell the story of the match at all. As you can see by the underlying data, 3.43 expected goals for Brighton, 0.69 for Liverpool. The most poignant comment that I saw on the match thread on Reddit was it was a 2-1 hammering, and that was 100% what it was. There was injuries, there were mismatches all over the pitch, like Liverpool completely devoid of any confidence. It was literally the most perfect emblem of everything that's been wrong this season under Arne Slot. Okay, so with all that, let's dive into what I think are some of the biggest issues this season so far. So far, as if like the entire season isn't basically over. But yeah, let's get into those. So what I want to start with is a point that I honestly do not see at all, or very, very infrequently, when looking at Liverpool content on YouTube, podcasts, on Reddit, etc. And maybe it's just because people want to just blame the manager. They just want to blame individual players. But I think the number one biggest issue that Liverpool have had so far this season is the summer transfer window under Richard Hughes. Now, I think people want to look at the price tags and think Richard Hughes did the best job he possibly could have. However, as I stated way back, I did another Liverpool special episode last summer, identifying issues that Liverpool had in the squad and players that potentially would have fixed those issues. And for me, the biggest issues were loss of Trent Alexander-Arnold, Robertson getting older, midfield stability, the striker issue, of course. And I think not only has Richard Hughes' transfer window, which we need to be clear about that. This was not Arne Slot. He is not the manager. He is the head coach. It was under Richard Hughes and the recruitment team to bring in players to suit Arne Slot. And categorically, I think Richard Hughes has failed in that. The squad is completely different from what was so successful last season. It's unrecognizable in style, not just like downgrading in players, but we went from Robertson on the left, who is fairly solid defensively, to Kirkez, who is a flying wing back, not known for his defensive qualities whatsoever, and Trent as well, who is a player who's known to tuck into the midfield, create high quality chances, long balls, bypass the press in a lot of ways, to Frimpong, who is again a wing back, complete polar. Like, you could not find a more opposite player to Trent Alexander-Arnold than Jeremy Frimpong. I love Frimpong, but when you make that transfer, you have to accommodate that in other ways, whether you're playing a more defensive midfielder that can cover where he is overlapping, or you like how Leverkusen cover for it. They played a back three, so you had a right center back that could cover those wide spaces when Frimpong's going forward. None of that was done in the transfer window. Not only was it not like accommodated, it was made worse because we didn't get Gehi over the line, which I think was a big failing. Leone got injured. Injuries are, I'm going to talk about that separately, but in terms of bringing players in, we did not bring in a solid defensive midfielder to cover for these now two wing backs that are going to want to get bomb forward. We didn't get a center back cover. Gehi, I think, was the option. And while I think maybe that's harsh that Richard Hughes didn't get it over the line, it wasn't 100% up to him. When you spend that much money on all these other positions, you have to have a level of focus for the positions you needed most. Center back was one of those positions. I think even more so than striker, considering we got Ekitike relatively early, the obsession with Isak to get that over the line, I think distracted from the Mark Gehi signing and other potential signings that we could have made. So yeah, that issue number one was really just focusing specifically on recruitment for that back line, because we knew that was going to be a huge issue, huge transition from where we were last season to this season, and that totally botched signings in that regard. And then piggybacking off of that, staying in the lane of transfers and summer window, I've already mentioned it a little bit with the Isak, but when you sign two strikers of roughly the same age, there's 2 years separating them, they're both going to want to start, you're creating more of an issue than, like, what would be a more ideal situation was just backing one striker and then having another striker bringing in another striker who we know is going to be the backup guy. I don't think you can have two starting strikers in a one striker formation and have that work. Now, maybe the vision of the club was to have a two striker formation, but again, that's totally different from what we saw last season. Last season, we technically played a zero striker formation for the majority of the season. We had Luis Diaz playing as a false nine. I think that worked really, really well. So honestly, when we got that Florian Wirtz signing over the line, a huge part of me, and I think this was reflected in the community as well, a lot of people thought that Wirtz was actually going to play that false nine role. Now that's been totally scrapped. I don't know if that's on Arne Slot or if that's on Richard Hughes, because then he went on and signed two actual nines, but huge difference from how he played last season. So I think signing two strikers, again, I will touch on this issue in more detail. We can't forget that we did lose Diogo. Did that push Richard Hughes to then sign two quality strikers? I don't know. I can't get inside their head, but I think even without hindsight, it was obvious that signing both of those guys was not going to make sense. It's not going to make sense when both of them are fit. Like right now, it almost works because Isak has been hurt with a broken leg the entire season. But when both are fit, you're either going to play a 2-striker formation, which again, total departure from last season where we played 0 for the majority of the season, or one is going to be missing out. At least one is going to be missing out. And then that has a lot of trickle effects into Florian Wirtz and Dominik Szoboszlai, because if you're going to be playing one striker, you're typically going to play, under an Arne Slot system, it's going to look like a 4-2-3-1. And that one spot behind the striker, we have 2 of our best players in that position, Florian Wirtz and Dominik Szoboszlai. So what do you do? Do you drop Dominik Szoboszlai deeper where he's still has a lot of energy but maybe less effective? Do you play Florian Wirtz out on the wing and play Dominik Szoboszlai in his rightful position? It's just such a headache every single week with too many players of similar ages, similar profiles, playing in like the same position where we only utilize one of those players. It just makes no sense. The only way I can rationalize the signings from the past summer window is if the intention was to play a 3-4-3, because that way you could play Wirtz and one of Ekitike or Szoboszlai in those like 10 roles basically, and Isak up top, or maybe some combination of Isak, Ekitike, Wirtz, and Szoboszlai. 4 players for 3 positions. I don't think that's that bad. And you can always drop Szoboszlai into a midfield role with Gravenberch, which we haven't seen enough of either. But that is literally the only way I can rationalize it. And it doesn't make sense. It falls apart because we didn't sign additional center backs. Like for a 3 at the back system, not only would we have probably needed Mark Gehi, we probably would have needed another center back on top of that, just because we're switching from a back 4 with only 2 center backs to a back 3 with 3 center backs. It doesn't make sense. Even if you're considering Leone is going to be fit, even if you're considering Gomez to be there, but this is going to be a ramble, so I apologize, but Gomez was supposedly going to go to AC Milan if Leone didn't get injured, or there was some exchange there, but basically we ended up having the same number of center backs that was planned for the squad ahead of the season. So I think we can confirmly say that this was not the back 3 was not the plan, to play wing backs, despite the fact that we have 2 wing backs, to play like a 2-striker system. That was not the plan. It seems like the plan under Richard Hughes was to play a 4-2-3-1 and Kerkez left back, Frimpong right back, play one of Isak and Ekitike and just hope that works perfectly fine. Play one of Szoboszlai and Wirtz and hope that's fine. That doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Just common sense, that does not work. And we've seen how it has not worked throughout the season. Okay, so that was hopefully enough to cover the Richard Hughes rant. Honestly, I've been saying this all season. I think Richard Hughes and his working in the summer transfer window is the number one contributor to where we are right now. I don't think he was signing players for an Arne Slot system. I don't think he was signing players for a system that worked full stop. I think Arne Slot had a very difficult job going into August with the squad at his availability, despite the fact that Richard Hughes spent a record amount of money for Liverpool. So taking the money out of it, I just think the profiles that were identified did not make sense in an Arne Slot system. And I don't think it really made sense for any other manager, unless there was a manager that was going to play a back 3 and utilize Gomez as a starter, which I don't think is, I don't think that would have been realistic either way. Now, the next bit of context and sorry if the Brighton Liverpool stat report is just going to haunt you, but yeah, this is probably just going to be a bit of a ramble. We'll go to some other visualizations and things, but the other bit of context that we have to understand that is kind of inhibiting any progress from Arne Slot is the injuries. I think some of the things I'll talk about later would have been made better if certain players were fit. If Leone didn't get a a season-ending injury, if Bradley didn't get a season-ending injury, if Isak was not out for the majority of the season with a broken leg, I think injuries have been rough on Liverpool this season, specifically because I think the recruitment was bad. If Leone was fit, I think there probably is some argument to go to a back three system, and maybe Arne Slot would have tried that, but there just have not been enough fit center backs. I argue that I think Gomez probably could have filled in as a third center back and tried that. We haven't seen that at all this season, and I think overall, yeah, this is treading onto another point I'm going to make later down the line, but the utilization of Gomez in general has just been really bad, I think, this season. So, yeah, injuries have been really rough. I think they've inhibited what Arne Slot could have potentially done and experimented with, but Slot has really experimented a lot. Like, we've seen a 4-2-2-2, we've seen a 4-2-3-1, we've seen every combination in between, a 4-4-2, different profiles within those, all variable. Like, I think Arne Slot has tried a whole lot, but I think injuries have inhibited even further things, and we have to discuss Diogo Jota. I think that's, it has been discussed a lot, so I'm not gonna talk more than needs to be, but I think just the overall emotional stability of the squad has been difficult to deal with, and I think that's some context that needs to be taken into account. I don't think that's everything, but it's just one of these several factors I think Arne Slot has had to contend with. It's been a difficult job for him. So injuries, bad summer window, despite the money spent, Jota, those are the contexts the main contexts and factors I think Arne Slot has had outside of his control. Now let's talk about what has been in his control this season that I think he has led astray as well. Okay, so I should have mentioned before that a lot of the people listening to this will be listening through podcast audio only. I'm on the Understat page for Liverpool, and I'll be descriptive, but first I have a lot more ranting to do. And we will go through these stats because I do think they're informative. And Understat, this is not a paid promotion by Understat. Hit me up if you ever are curious in sponsoring the videos or podcasts. A lot of these stats are very informative, but I still have some more ranting. So let's talk about what I think is the number one issue that Slot has imposed upon himself, which I think is the lack of squad utilization. And this was actually a concern of mine last season as well, but because Liverpool were doing so well, who's going to complain that Harvey Elliott and Curtis Jones aren't getting enough minutes? But this season, I think it's even more obvious because Liverpool have been playing so poorly, but the lack of squad utilization has been horrible. We've seen an overplaying of a core set of players who have been so poor this season, and a lack of playing of players I think have actually shown moments of good play, but they just have not earned the full trust of Arne Slot. And as a person who is just watching the matches and is not like built into the system and seeing what's going on behind the scenes, I don't want to overstep what I'm trying to say, but I think most of us can agree that Curtis Jones, Harvey Elliott, Joe Gomez, Endo, Rio Ngamoa, Chiesa, like these guys just have not been getting the minutes that they deserve. I think with some of them, specifically Gomez and Chiesa, There's probably some minutes being managed for potential injuries. They are injury-prone players, but even that, I think that they have been way underplayed. And I think that has furthered some of the issues that we've seen in the squad. Like, we can't play a 3 at the back system because he doesn't trust Joe Gomez. And if he wants to play a back 4 that has a little bit more stability, why doesn't he play a more defensive player who can play both left back and right back, Joe Gomez, instead of playing 2 wing backs who are just bombing up the entire time, leaving Konate and Virgil van Dijk completely isolated? Like, that just does not make sense to me. And I think Chiesa is probably the most egregious, especially, and this point was probably more relevant earlier in the season, maybe not early, but like mid-season when Salah was really playing poorly. He was just crying out for Chiesa to play on that right wing. He just still has not gotten a single look in. It's like, we are far more likely to play Frimpong as a right winger and play like Szoboszlai or Curtis Jones as a right back, 2 players out of position, instead of just playing Chiesa as a right winger and keeping everybody in their more natural position. So that just, it does not make sense to me. And Chiesa, I think maybe some of his performances have been overblown because he gets on in like the last 5 minutes, and on the off chance he gets a goal, people potentially overhype him, but he's in the squad for a reason. He's a quality player. The fact that he can't get a start against Brighton when Salah is out is just, I think, kind of egregious to me. So, and it just goes to show that Arne Slot just does not trust these guys. So what does that mean? What does that set you up? If you are the sporting director and you're Richard Hughes or whatever your title is, well, what does that mean for the next summer transfer window? You have to get rid of all of these guys: Chiesa, Jones, Gomez, Endo. Like, that is a lot of squad turnover. And who is to think that the players that he brings in are now just suddenly going to be trusted by Arne Slot because they are his players? I don't know. I think Arne Slot has his guys and he just goes with them. And I don't think that served him this season. And Rio has been getting some more minutes, but I think he just deserves to start at this point. Like, take the age out of it. I know that he needs to be managed to some degree, but let the shackles off. Like, he is the only player that has any pace whatsoever, apart from Ekitike, in that front 4, 5, whatever you want to call it. So I think Rio should be starting the majority of the matches, and you probably, if you have watched any amount of Liverpool, you would probably assume that he needs to come in for Cody Gakpo, who has just been slow, predictable, miserable on the ball. He has one thing, and that's physicality. And that doesn't work every single match. I don't understand why Cody Gakpo is getting so overplayed. But that will be discussed in the next segment. Focusing on the players who haven't been getting the minutes, Curtis Jones, I think there's a clear and obvious place for Curtis Jones in this team, and that's to replace or to drop for form reasons McAllister, who has just been absolutely awful this season. Great player. He's had his moments. He's been able to get goals recently. He's been picking up form a little bit, but that does not justify playing him 99.99% of the time when you have Curtis Jones there. I'm not saying Curtis Jones is amazing or better than McAllister, but as an alternative, when you're utilizing the squad, like, it's no surprise that some of these guys look rusty when they're having to come in and play right back, a position they're not even naturally playing, when they don't get enough minutes throughout the season. So the issues that we created, or Arne Slot created towards the beginning of the season when he's not playing these guys, is now it's coming home to roost towards the end of the season, where you have guys that are massively overplayed, tired, exhausted from playing 2 matches every single week. And you need a squad to come in and give these guys some rest. I think that's the main purpose of the squad. I think Arsenal have been a perfect example of this. They've had lots of injuries. They have a great squad, definitely the best squad in the league, and not to say that our squad is anywhere near their level of strength, but Arteta understands that you can rotate these guys in some matches and not the entire team. You don't need to scrap the entire 11, bring on a totally new squad into lesser games. You just one or two rotate in and out, keep these guys fresh. And not just the starting 11, but the squad guys as well. I think that's really important to keep these squad guys fresh so that they can perform when they're asked to do so. And I think that has been a massive failing of Arne Slot. And questions really do have to be asked about that specifically. The next point I want to make, it goes hand in hand with the last point. So lack of squad utilization lends itself perfectly for overusing a core set of players. And to be completely honest, I'm very shocked that Arne Slot has employed this kind of system. Arne Slot under Feyenoord, very, very different type of manager. Got great use out of the squad, had some of the lowest injuries across Europe because he was able to keep his guys fresh, using the squad appropriately, keeping the starting 11 in tip-top shape. Whereas at Liverpool, throughout his entire tenure at Liverpool, he has relied on a core set of players and frozen everybody else out for the most part. So guys like McAllister, guys like Cody Gakpo, Gravenberch to an extent, I think. And then there's core sets of players that under any manager are going to be playing 99% of the time. Virgil van Dijk, Kanate, I guess because he's our only other fit and available center back. But you get what I'm trying to say. There's a lot of players in the squad that are just overplayed to kind of an extreme degree. The ones specifically that I want to focus on are Cody Gakpo and McAllister, because I think they have really struggled with form this season. And our slot, like, Curtis Jones is sitting right there. He can come in on the occasional match when McAllister's form is not at its best to play. There's not that big of a drop off. I still think McAllister is probably overall a better player than Curtis Jones, but he is the squad player that can take over when the form is not where it needs to be, and that has not happened almost at all this season, which is crazy. Cody Gakpo, on the other hand, maybe there's less of a natural replacement there. Obviously, Rio Ngamoa was 16 when he started the season. But Chiesa, again, going back to that he can play on the left wing instead of Cody Gakpo. You don't have to play a winger formation. As we've seen, our wingers have been kind of trash this season. I know that tactically is, comes about from other situations, but what if we just, bear with me for a second, what if we just played Carlo Ancelotti Christmas tree formation, which, for anybody who doesn't know, he employed this back and at AC Milan was probably its most typical, but you play 4-3-2-1, and those two attacking midfielders, one was Kaká, but under this it could be Wirtz and Szoboszlai, and then you play a back three behind him with Gravenberch, maybe an Endo gets some amount of time, Curtis Jones, McAllister, anybody could play in that three-man midfield, and then you can then use those wing backs to bomb on and create the width. I think that's a lot more functional than what we've seen. Actually, why don't we just go over to Understat for a second? Because we can see the most used formations. Number one is a 4-2-3-1, followed by a 4-4-2, 4-4-3, a 4-4-3, almost made a bully slip, 4-3-3, 4-1-2-1-2, 4-2-2-2, 4-5-1 has been used 8 times, and 4-1-4-1 has been used 6 times, according to Understat. So I know formation isn't everything, but getting the right players playing their natural positions, or just taking formation out of it, but taking up space upon the pitch that they perform best in. I think just like you've seen it at Manchester United, you just play players where they are more natural and where they play best, they're going to play better. So this is getting into other territory, but yeah, I just think the over-reliance on some of these guys has meant that tactically we don't have a lot of flexibility. We basically have to play a 4-2-3-1 if we're going to play Cody Gakpo every single week. We're going to play McAllister every single week, twice a week, twice on Sunday. I think it diminishes what we can do tactically, and it's not serving them to be playing every single week. As we've seen them burn out, they're just not in good form. Would it be the worst thing in the entire world to take some of these guys out of the limelight for 1 week? Just 1 week. You don't play Cody Gakpo. Play Rio. Start Chiesa. Play a Christmas tree formation. Maybe that's a little bit on the wacky side, but you get what I'm trying to say. You don't have to play Cody Gakpo and McAllister every single week. There are options. And again, you don't have to tear up the starting 11 every single week just to play the squad players. You take 1 or 2 out and you keep the rotation going, keep the squad players fit and ready to come on for when they're making their cameo appearances, and you keep the starting 11 more fresh so that they can play better in the 80 to 90 minutes that they're going to play. This is going to be a long list, so I seriously thought that this might be a short podcast / video. Dangerously wrong with that one. So next issue I want to talk about, Arne Slot's lack of understanding of balance in a team. And maybe he does have a better understanding of balance, but when I see Kerkez, Van Dijk, Konate, Frimpong, I am worried. I think that works under a very extreme set of circumstances, which would mean that you have the ball like 90% of the time. If you have the ball the entire time, play as many wing backs as you want. That makes a whole lot of sense. But it's not surprising when Konate has looked like one of our worst players this season because he's so incredibly isolated. Frimpong is he's in Tokyo basically with Kerkez up the pitch, and we're playing with basically 2 center backs, 2 defenders, and everybody else is pushed forward. And not only has that been catastrophic defensively, it's not been good offensively either. Like, if Kerkez was getting record numbers of assists, same with Frimpong, they're not even close. They're not like these attacking masterminds that you need to play them in order to play attacking football. The other end of the spectrum, hopefully I don't overuse this as an example, but I think Arsenal are maybe on the other end of the extreme spectrum, where they're playing 4 center backs, and it served them very well this season. Not to say that's what we should do, but I think on both ends, I think Arsenal would play a lot better if they played like a Miles Lewis-Skelly, who's better at moving up and into the midfield than Hincapié and Calafiore have both been good, so maybe that's a bad example, but let's say they had a more attacking fullback that isn't basically a teenager on either the right side or the left side. I think Arsenal would play a lot better. I think they'd have a lot better flow. They'd have more players suited to getting goals and assists when they're pushed up the pitch with the ball. And I think it has, led to kind of the game being a little bit slower on their end when you have playing 4 center backs. Now, Liverpool, total opposite. We've got 2 wing backs. We've got an erratic center back, and then we've got Virgil van Dijk. Like that's common sense, people. Kirkez is not good defensively. Even if he was, Frimpong is definitely not going to help you defensively. No ragging on Frimpong. I think Frimpong, or Kirkez for that matter, I think both are amazingly suited to a wingback system, or you play one of them has to be more defensive. So let's say we play with Frimpong, Konate, Van Dijk, playing a Joe Gomez at left back, which before anybody starts clowning me, Joe Gomez had probably one of his best seasons as a left back under Jurgen Klopp. If you remember that season, which I am terrible with memory of years and whatnot, but Gomez was amazing. He was playing his best football as a left back. Maybe he's a little bit off it this season. Maybe he doesn't work well with Arne Slot. I don't know, but to not even consider that, to play at least one fullback that's a little bit more defensive. Gomez has played a little bit at right back and when we've had Kirkez, but by and large, it just has not been attempted at all. And there are other solutions to this as well. You don't just need to play Joe Gomez specifically at left or right back. What if we played Endo instead of McAllister? Again, another symptom of overutilizing some players, not utilizing the bench as well. Right now, it seems ridiculous, but if Endo had played some amount of games that was like greater than, I'm so curious to see how many matches he's played. He's played 8 matches, got 162 minutes, 31 games into the season. It's unacceptable. Like, you basically don't even, like, these guys down here. Oh, it's not sorted by appearances. Let's do that. These guys down here are basically irrelevant. I know some of them injuries, but Trey Neone, another example of like, how has he not gotten more time? Harvey Elliott's obviously on loan. That's a different situation. Even Mamardashvili, like, there have been several games. Like, why is he not playing the FA Cup or even some of these Champions League ties? Why does Allison have to play all the time? He is always injured. He gets several. He's injured right now. Okay. Going back to balance of the squad, or not balance of the squad, balance of the starting 11 and just overall formation. Joe Gomez only getting 16 appearances, 475 minutes. Just too low for some of these guys. So if Endo had more games under his belt at this point in the season, it would probably make more sense to play him and like Gravenberg, for instance, or him and McAllister. It doesn't always have to be McAllister making way, but having somebody, a more defensive minded center midfielder like Endo, could help cover for some of those players bombing forward. And we just have not seen enough of it. Like, maybe I'm completely talking out of my ass, but why has this solution not been attempted over more than a handful of minutes at the end of the game? So yeah, those would be two solutions, I think, to an obviously imbalanced starting 11 that we just consistently see. And I know maybe if Bradley was fit, that would help a little bit with the balance. He's a little bit more of a traditional right back than Frimpong. Robertson, I don't think he's a better player than Kirkez at this point, but I think he fits. Like, it's not really a surprise when Robertson has played better than Kirkez, because he's just more of a balanced left back than Kirkez is. So yeah, those are really the main things. I think it's mostly defensively and specifically about the wing backs. I think we would see Konate play a lot better if we had Bradley fit, but also like maybe playing Endo in some of those games where we just need to play a little bit more defensively and cover ourselves so that Konate and Van Dijk aren't just completely isolated out there in the wind. The next point I want to talk about, it's kind of challenging because Arne Slot's obviously only been there for a year and a half, going on 2 years, but players have just not improved under Arne Slot. I think the main one that you could discuss is Gravenberg, who I think most of it is not because he's improved under Arne Slot, it's that he's gotten time to play under Arne Slot, and I think tactically he fits better with an Arne Slot system, playing deep and able to make these quick runs through the midfield than under a Jurgen Klopp system. So overall, I can't point to many players and say they've improved to a point that it is not beyond where, like, Rio, you can use it as an example. He hasn't been playing senior football, so obviously he's improved from nothing to where he is now. But across the pitch, you've seen more regressions, and maybe some of this is to do with age, so take that into consideration. But we've seen more regressions from players than we've seen progressions. So I think the main regressions from players, obviously Salah, I think Van Dijk, I think even Gravenberch this season has regressed from how he was last season. Again, all these are interconnected. So if the squad was playing a little bit better, if players were a little bit more fresh, these would obviously help themselves out, and overall it would, like, a rising tide kind of thing. But who else? Roberts. A lot of these are to do with age, so it's kind of tough to point out, but that's where Liverpool are as a squad. And I think that, again, that's another failing of Richard Hughes. We either have these guys who are way too inexperienced and young, they don't have enough first team football to the level where they're competing for titles, or they're at the end of their career. Salah, Van Dijk, Robertson, Alisson to some degree, but mostly because of his injuries. We don't have enough guys that are in kind of like prime age. So focusing on those guys in, like, quote unquote prime age, Cody Gakpo, I don't think he's gotten better from where we saw him under Jurgen Klopp or even Slot last season. Actually, I don't know. I kind of take that back. He's gotten a lot of playing time, and he did have a period at the beginning of the season where he was doing very well, but overall just hasn't progressed enough for me. McAllister definitely regressed. Gravenberch, again, I think that was more of like a tactical reason for why he's been playing, why he played better under Slot compared to Klopp. Konate, I think he's definitely regressed under Arne Slot. Again, it's impacted by the fact that he's so much more isolated now than he was under Klopp and last season. Who else? I forgot. I literally have the squad in front of me. Dominic Szoboszlai, I think we could say he's definitely progressed this season. He's been Liverpool's best player. Ekitike, the brand new signing. So I'm really focusing on players that we've had at our disposal. Curtis Jones, not progressed. Chiesa, not progressed. Salah, regressed. Robertson, regressed. Gomez, regressed, although I just don't feel like we've seen enough of him. Frimpong, again, new signing, but has he played better at Liverpool than he has at Leverkusen? I would say no. Bradley, tough to call because he's been injured, but I definitely haven't seen a massive progression, like a leap from Bradley. Rio, he's 17. Isak, when he was fit, definite regression compared to how he was playing at Newcastle. Endo is in the shadow realm. Mamadashvili, goalkeepers are a bit different, but I think probably about the same. No regression or no progression. Trey, young kid. Yeah, so I feel like we've kind of gone through everybody, but definitely more regressions than progressions, and focusing specifically on the like peak age players, not enough progression for me. So I don't feel like he's improved players. Some of that is helped and hurt by the circumstances that we're in, but probably not good enough to, if all these other failings are around you, you kind of have to lean on something, and the players improving under Arne Slot is definitely not one of them. The last issue I think is a bit frou-frou, but I think it is relevant. Now, the last issue that I'll talk about relating to Arne Slot is mental fragility, and we see that borne out of late losers. Under Klopp, it was the late winners that we were getting. Complete flip, where now we have the most goals conceded in extra time in Premier League history. Is that right? I feel like the commentators have said that several times. So if I'm getting it incorrect, I apologize. But the general sentiment is that Liverpool have been losing way too many games late on, conceding in the 90th plus minute. It's just unacceptable. And maybe that's harsh, but I think a lot of people would argue. I'm not one of those people that says, you're spending all this money, you should get certain results. But I think the common fan would say, spent all this money, why have we not gone from first place last season to first place plus this season, and now we're fighting it out for Champions League qualification? I won't dive into that, but just specifically in terms of mental fragility, I think this team, whether it's impacted by the loss of Jota or not, this team is very emotionally and mentally fragile. And I think some of that, it's not entirely Slot's job, but he is in control of some of that mental resilience that was like a hallmark under Jurgen Klopp. Not to say we need to get to that, or that's even attainable, or that, bring Klopp back, but Slot has to take some accountability for how mentally fragile we look towards the end of games. Now, we can kind of see this to some degree that from Understat, looking at the game state statistics, where it's been a draw, that's been the majority of the time, that makes sense. I think that's going to be for the majority of teams. I would imagine the majority of the time, the game state is going to be a 0-0. So 1,600 minutes are balanced. The next greatest amount of minutes, 496, are a goal difference of 1. 466 minutes, a goal deficit of 1. 257 minutes, a goal deficit, or not deficit, a goal difference of more than 1. So 2, 3, 4. And only 128 minutes where we've been down by more than 1 goal. So on the face of things, it's looking a little bit too balanced between a goal difference of 1 and a goal deficit of 1. Like the fact that there's only 30-minute difference between these two, when this is a team that is supposed to be challenging for the title, or at least comfortably in the title race alongside Arsenal and Man City. Let's just go over to Manchester City. Let's see if we can find them on the fly. Let's look at their game state. I'm just out of pure curiosity. So they have 300. So obviously they're able to get goals early a lot quicker. We had, 1,700 minutes where it was tied. A goal difference is 0. They've got 837 minutes with a goal difference of 1, and 500 minutes where they're down a goal. So a 300-minute difference between winning and losing a game. Massive. And if we go to Arsenal, I'm kind of curious to see how they compare, because they're a very different style of team. Let's see. So it would appear through looking at the stats, they're probably a little bit more close to us in terms of getting early goals. But a 400-minute difference between winning a game and losing a game. And they haven't spent any time where they've been down by 2 goals or more. So it's obvious to see why they are in first place. They have a 400-minute difference between winning a game and losing a game across all their game states. So crazy. Let's go back to Liverpool if I can find them. When did Arsenal play us? We're not going to look at that game, but okay, we're back to Liverpool. And it's just become a common theme that Liverpool conceding late, and there's obviously something correlated behind the scenes, and maybe we could talk to some of those factors, some of which we've already done. But Jota has probably been how am I trying to phrase this? It's definitely been a negative influence on the squad. You can tell the squad players are upset. I think specifically some players more than others. Salah, maybe, McAllister, Kanate. I think some of these guys were really connected with Jota, and that has maybe impacted them more. But across the squad overall, the confidence is just so low. And I hope people are not getting this twisted. This is no blame on Jota or even just him passing that impact. What I'm trying to say is that it's the job of the manager to instill confidence in players, create a level of mental stability so that we're not conceding these late goals. And again, I don't think all of these late goals can be attributed to Arne Slot, but I think it definitely has not been a success. So I think it's a problem, and I think a managerial change could help that, because I think it seems like from what we've seen, and a lot of this is in hindsight, the methods and solutions that Arne Slot has turned to have not created a mentally stable position. All the players look like they have lost confidence, and whether for goodness or for badness, if you look across the Premier League, when the confidence goes and you see players with their heads down like you do at Liverpool, you tend to see a managerial change pretty quickly, because I think the higher ups do see that as an opportunity, that we're losing points due to an issue that is very manageable from the head coach, instilling confidence and getting the band back together. So again, I'm not saying making managerial changes based on player confidence is the right or wrong thing to do, but I think stepping back, just trying to be as a third party observer, I think that tends to be when teams make a change. Now, rewinding and flipping this all, going all the way back, do I think Arne Slot should continue as the manager? No. Okay, now here's where I present a case against Arne Slot, although I guess that's what I've been talking about. Really, this is a case for swapping him to a new manager. Looking at the table now, this is Understat, and I've got it sorted by expected points. Now, in this table, even just last week, Liverpool were actually third in the expected points table, meaning that their position is probably a little unkind to how they've actually performed based on the underlying data, which I do agree. However, if you go back to the start of the season, would any Liverpool fan or would anybody in the upper management be totally fine with a third place finish? The answer would probably be no. And specifically a distant third place finish, because even if you're looking at the expected points, by the underlying data, the expected points would have suggested Liverpool would have 42, let's call it 40. I'm bad at numbers despite having a PhD in statistics. 53 expected points. They currently have 49 actual points. So they're off pace by about 4, right? So in terms of anybody above them, all of the other teams are overperforming their actual points. So Manchester United have, do I have this reversed? Oh yeah. They're overperforming their underlying points. So Manchester United actually have 55. Expected points have them closer to 53. Manchester City have 61. Expected points have them at 59. Arsenal have 70. Expected points have them at 65. But the question is, let's say expected points were the actual observed points, would the higher ups be okay with Liverpool having 52 points? Basically, what is that? 13 points, 13 expected points off of the league leaders, Arsenal? I would say no. And there was, on commentary today, they said Liverpool are 20 or 24 points off where they were last season at this point in the season. I mean, that is just so damning. To be 24 point, they at this point last season only had 1 loss. We now have 9. Is it 9 losses? Oh, well, 10. I guess 9 was while the match was still being played. 10 losses at this point in the season is just so, it's miserable. Okay, now before I present a case for hiring a new manager, is there any defensive slot whatsoever? And I think this video or podcast has been pretty harsh on him. Like I said, there's a lot of things that are outside of his control. Injuries, Richard Hughes, Jota. I think a lot of these things have very serious impacts for what, at the start of the season, clean slate. What does Arne Slot have to work with? I think that's a very, very difficult job. I think any manager would have had a difficult job with that, apart from maybe a select few managers that suit the signings better, which maybe you're understanding what I'm getting at here. But yeah, tough job. I think it would have been difficult for almost any manager, but big old but, the things under his control, I think it has not worked out for him. Everything he's tried has essentially been a failure. Unfortunately, Liverpool are still in the FA Cup. They're still in the Champions League, still in the race for top 4/5 Champions League qualification for next season. But I think he's about as close to the absolute minimum of what would have been expected of him, that I think, given we've got international break, a big old loss to Brighton, which would have supposedly probably have been expected to be a win in other circumstance, and it just looked like there was no chance. Like, watching the match, there was no chance Liverpool were going to win that. None. It was a 2-1 hammering, as Reddit commenter that I just browsed by, can't remember the name, but it's at a miserable state. I think everything under Arne Slot's control, for the most part, has just not worked for him. And I think at this point is probably the time to move on to a manager, former Liverpool player, available, sitting there, he's chilling, and it has to be Xabi Alonso. But I guess before I get into Xabi Alonso and why I think that would be a good appointment, I do want to quickly talk about, just to check myself, I think towards the beginning of the season, where I had several check-ins with myself throughout the season. I've probably talked about it on podcasts as well, but there are several points throughout the season where I was giving Arne Slot, he had lots of credit in the bank, and I think you have to give him that. He won the Premier League his first year in the job. He did very well in the Champions League, lost out to the losers. Even that match I thought was, it could have potentially gone either way. PSG were just so good. In the other competitions, a little less memorable, but Liverpool were just so dominant last season. You have to give Arne Slot the credit. I don't buy into this. It was Klopp's team. To some extent, that was true. However, Klopp had a Klopp's team. He wasn't winning the league like Arne Slot did last season. So I think we need to put some respect on Arne Slot. He made tactical changes that made a huge world of a difference. I mean, Gravenberch is a player reborn under Arne Slot, and we can now rely on him. Like, he just got the new contract. Hopefully we can rely on him moving forward as a center midfielder, not as like an attacking mid where Klopp was trying to play him. But yeah, Klopp was not able to get that level of performance out of a Klopp team than Arne Slot did. Mohamed Salah had his best season, bare none, last season. Now he's having one of his worst seasons, and I don't think it's a regression to the mean. It's not like he massively overperformed last season and now he's like massively underperforming to regress to the mean. I think he overperformed last season, no doubt. This season, it's not even on the map. It's tactically, it's so different. He's basically playing in a different position. The players around him are a totally different tactical makeup. It's obvious why he's not performing to the levels that he did last season, because it's basically a completely different team around him specifically. No Trent, Wirtz is now playing more as the attacking midfielder instead of Szoboszlai. You have a new like center forward instead of like a Darwin or a Diaz. So all of the players that are like in his triangle, completely different. So I think it's harsh to compare last season to this season in that way, saying that he should be performing at that level, just because the entire team has gone down a notch, and I think the players around him are worse for him specifically. So, okay, going back to how I was checking in with, how do I get on these tangents? I have been checking in with myself and saying at certain points of the season, should Arne Slot go? I think a lot of people were early adapters of Arne Slot needs to leave. I was not one of those people. I think towards the beginning of the season, I said, I think I did say like February, March, like when the Champions League starts breaking out, was basically the time where even if the results were still not going his way, the level of performance needed to be more reflective of how we played last season, or a new type of performance that still is conducive to getting results. So neither of that has happened. We're nearing the end of March. Nothing has really changed. So I think the credit is getting very, very low. And I think at this point, you just, as I've said, obviously I've already come to my conclusion. I think the credit has gone to zero. And I think because Liverpool are in a position where Champions League, realistically, Champions League qualification is probably not out of reach, even if we were to keep Arne Slot towards the end. But we're in a position where there is a manager who is very suited to the players we have at our disposal that can still do something with this team. And let's not forget, Xabi Alonso was the first choice over Arne Slot when we tried to bring him in. The timing wasn't right, obviously. He wanted to spend another season with Leverkusen. And then I think ultimately his goal was to go to Real Madrid. That's already played out. So that fantasy's gone. I think the next solution for Xabi Alonso, I think the next best job for Xabi Alonso is Liverpool. And I think the players almost perfectly suit him. So whether he plays a back four or a back three, I think Xabi Alonso is the best candidate. He's available. He's a club legend to many. And I think he's probably one of the best young managers available, not even just available, just out there. Okay, so why Xabi Alonso? Well, I think last summer's transfers have a lot to do with it. And if this was all part of the master plan to assume Xabi Alonso was going to fail at Real Madrid, which fail is harsh. I think he was fine. I think he was better than Arbeloa, for instance. But if the master plan was for Xabi Alonso to go to Real Madrid, fail, and then have another opportunity to join this Liverpool squad, that is like a level of reading the tea leaves that has never been seen before. So I discount that entirely. I think Richard Hughes signed players that just happened to suit Xabi Alonso's system. And I have a hard time understanding where Richard Hughes was coming from, the philosophy behind it. I think it was massive overpays for a lot of these players that didn't suit the manager that you had at your disposal. So again, I'm very critical of Richard Hughes, but they've kind of stumbled into the situation where if they stick with Arne Slot, there are so many signings that need to be made. You need to sign two wingers, 100%. Salah's gone. Gakpo just is not it. He is not a Premier League winning starting winger. So you probably need to sign two wingers. You probably need to sign, despite the fact you already got Xhaka, you probably need another center back, definitely a CDM. Honestly, you probably need a right and a left back as well. With Robbo leaving and Frimpong just is probably not. I think we could assume that under an Arne Slot system, he's more of a winger than a right back. So you basically need an entirely new 11 if you were to keep Arne Slot, which would be very expensive. Xabi Alonso would be entirely different. under Xabi, we basically just need to sign, I would say, a defensive center midfielder and a center back, a left-sided center back specifically. The rest you can kind of let it roll, and then you would just need to like replace players that would then go on to leave. But you're not playing a winger system, so you don't need to rely on Gakpo. You don't need, like, if Salah leaves to Saudi, that you don't even need to replace him necessarily. You've got plenty of players who can play that attacking 10 system, those two attacking 10s is what I'm trying to say. You've got plenty of players who can play like the 8 role. You got McAllister, you got Jones. If Szoboszlai needs to drop and you're playing a different setup in the 10s, there's just so much more, like, you could utilize the squad so much better under a 3-4-3 type system, or a 3-4-2-1 type system, I guess, to be more specific. But what I was going to mention is that Dookie Critchley, former Football Daily guy, put out a great podcast video on Liverpool and who they would sign under Xabi Alonso. I'm not a big YouTube in the comments kind of guy, but I did make a comment and I left my thoughts about how, well, for one, another failing of Richard Hughes, which I probably should have mentioned, is that we don't have enough homegrown players. We signed too many foreign players, which put us over the limit for Champions League, which is why when Leone was still fit, we basically did not have, like, we had to deregister or like not have Chiesa registered. So Chiesa wasn't even going to be able to be played in the Champions League. Not that he's played a lot of time, but you get what I'm trying to say. Like, we've got so many non-homegrown players that it's now becoming an issue in Champions League for registering players. You don't want that. So we need a lot more homegrown players. That would be preferable over a foreign player, and that's just the situation we're in. Unfortunately, like, if we would have signed Gehi, that would have been one less non-homegrown player that we would had to register. So yeah, we're in a shit situation because of Richard Hughes, unfortunately. But yeah, what I'm trying to say is some of the comments I left on that video that Doogie came out with, which again, I thought was very well done, and I liked his suggestions. I would go a slightly different direction with it. Under Xabi Alonso, I think homegrown needs to be a main factor, because not just because I have something about homegrown, it's the Champions League registration. You don't want to be in a situation where you're not able to register key players of the squad. And hopefully we get a better usage out of players in the squad under Xabi Alonso than Arne Slot. I think the bar is so low with squad utilization under Slot that even if it gets slightly better, I think we can take a positive from that. So under Xabi Alonso, the signings that I would have recommended, I think probably the most impactful position to sign for across this entire 11 is the left-sided center back. So I think you really have to nail that signing, and I think there's really no other better option than Nico Schlotterbeck at this moment in time. You could probably argue for some others, but I think in terms of what you're getting for what you're probably having to pay for him, that is probably the best option. He's a good age, left foot. I definitely would this is some of the signings I recommended last season and the season before, to be fair. Last season, I recommended we sign Hincapié. He went to Arsenal. The season before that, I recommended we sign Calafiori. He went to Arsenal as well. So, it's so frustrating that Arsenal have all these center backs, left-sided center backs, that I think would have been amazing at Liverpool. So if we would have had Hincapié, I think he would have been perfect for that left-side center back role, but that's off the market. What we have available now, I think Nico Schlotterbeck would be the best option. He feels very Liverpool, got that Dortmund connection as well. I think he would be perfect. And then realistically, from the starting 11, I think there's only one other signing you need to make. And my recommendation, maybe this is a bit obvious, it's going to be a lot of money. I think you go to Nottingham Forest and you say, here's £100 million, give me Anderson. I think he is the best English. Again, we're focusing on homegrown players. so that we can register the foreign players in Champions League competition, which hopefully we're in. You go to Nottingham Forest and you do whatever it takes to get Anderson. I think he is industrious. He's got enough to his game apart from just being industrious and defensive. I think his technique and his ability to play through a press is very underrated, honestly. I think people see him as more of like anything box to box type player. I think he has a lot to his game. He's only 23. I think there's room to develop him as well under the right manager. I think he would be perfect alongside Gravenberch. I think both of them would work very, very well together. The other options, which I think have been popular, but I think are would be lower down on my radar, I think would be Wharton from Crystal Palace. I totally rate him as a player. However, I think Anderson is more suited to a Liverpool team. I think if we didn't have Gravenberch and we had maybe a more defensive-minded midfielder, if like a better Endo, maybe like if we had a better Endo, I think Wharton would be amazing. Considering we have Gravenberch, I think there just needs to be a lot more pressing and defensive hard work, and I think Anderson eclipses Wharton in all aspects defensively. So that's why I would go for Anderson. I think a player that I think Liverpool should sign on top of that, especially if they go on and lose like a McAllister. If McAllister goes to Real Madrid or wherever his fantasy club that his, agent dad is always consistently talking about, whatever. I think Hayden Hackney from Middlesbrough would be a great squad option alongside Curtis Jones. Great. I think he's like 24. Let me look that up. Hopefully I have nothing naughty on my search history. Hayden Hackney. He's 23 years old. Look at that. Wikipedia. Look at the beauty on that middle part. I think he's an amazing player, and I think he would really suit Liverpool. Will he go to Liverpool? Probably not, but I think that would be a signing I would make, especially homegrown. We need that. I think there's a lot of room to develop, and I think under Xabi Alonso, I think he would be very good because his progressive long balls are amazing, some of the best. So I would love Hayden Hackney at Liverpool as like a rotation option, but I think he would get a lot of minutes at Liverpool as well. I think looking at the underutilization of Jones and the overutilization of McAllister, underutilization of Endo, I think if you're losing Endo and you're losing McAllister, I think you sign Anderson and Hackney, call it a day. That's your midfield. And then another player I want to recommend for a center back option, because now we've got three of them. We would have Xhaka, Virgil van Dijk, Schlotterbeck, probably as that like starting three. But I think with a lot of, hopefully you're rotating a little bit more. Virgil van Dijk is not getting any younger. I would go for Cresswell from, is he playing for Fiorentina? No. Aaron Cresswell. You are not playing for Stoke? Oh, this is the wrong Cresswell. God damn it. This is the West Ham guy. Not Aaron Cresswell. I'm doing this live. Fuck it. Fiorentina? Does he play for Fiorentina? Charlie Cresswell. Jesus. Where do you play for? You don't play for Fiorentina. Toulouse. I'm an idiot. I am such an idiot. Okay, sorry. Purple teams, they're all the same to me. Charlie Cresswell, despite the fact that I didn't remember which purple club he played for, he's been phenomenal. He's had one of the best, what am I trying to say? Aerial, what is the term? I'm so stupid. Aerial challenge rate, whatever. He's winning the ball a lot in the air. And that's something we need. Aerial duels, something I was trying to say. Yeah, Charlie Cresswell, he's been one of the highest rated center backs. Again, homegrown. I don't think he would cost a whole lot. He's at a good age, 23 as well. So yeah, that would be my recommendation to get him in. So you would have a rotation of Leone and Cresswell alongside Xhaka, Virgil van Dijk, and Schlotterbeck. I think that's probably pretty good. Joe Gomez hopefully stays around for another year or two. I love, if you haven't been able to gather from this video, I love Joe Gomez, and I think he's underrated. So I think that would be enough rotation in the back three, especially considering I don't think Virgil van Dijk is going to be able to play forever, although playing this 3 at the back system suits him as well. I think him being in the center of a back three probably prolongs his career a little bit. I'm thinking like, oh my God, what is his name? I'm going to have to cut because I've made enough blunders already. Thiago Silva at Chelsea, who was absolutely class and played amazing in that back as a center back in that back three under, oh my God, Tuchel. Why am I've completely lost my brain cells after this Brighton match. But anyways, I think that prolongs Virgil van Dijk's career. And I'm going to throw, since I've already named all the signings I would make, I think that would basically be it. I don't think you would need anything else, although I guess we need to talk about Robertson's replacement. I'll throw that up, but let's look at how the signings would look in a formation under Xabi Alonso, which I assume would be a 3-4-2-1, but could look a little different. So here is what I think the squad overall would look like under Xabi Alonso, assuming certain players are leaving and coming in. So at the back, I think Alisson would probably remain number 1. I think he's got 1 year left on his deal. You could probably extend him as well, and maybe he wants to play like a backup role, but I think Mamardashvili is an amazing second goalkeeper. I think he's just as good enough to be a first string goalkeeper for Liverpool. So I just think Alisson is a special quality. So I would keep Alisson as the main goalkeeper, Mamardashvili playing, hopefully getting more involved in FA Cup and Champions League and Carabao Cup as well, because I think he just deserves more minutes. He's a fantastic goalkeeper. He was amazing in La Liga. Woodman, an amazing third goalkeeper option. And the fact that we got him for a free, he's homegrown, finally. That was probably our best signing last summer. Oh gosh, if that's my actual reason. Yeah, but Woodman I think is great for as a third choice. Then looking at players, we've already signed Xhaka, so I didn't highlight him, but Xhaka, Van Dijk, and Schlotterbeck would be a new signing. So I've highlighted the new signings, of course, of the ones we haven't made yet, in yellow, highlighted in yellow. So that would be the theoretical starting lineup. But I think because Van Dijk is older, because I think players have been injured, it wouldn't surprise me. And if you're losing Konate and you're adding a center back to your formation, I think, and again, this is obviously assuming Konate doesn't sign a new contract, I think that's probably the most likely scenario at this point. But if we lose Konate, I think you have, and add a third center back, of course, I think you have to add another center back to the rotation. So Schlotterbeck and Cresswell would be in, Gomez a backup, and Leone as a backup as well. Hopefully Leone is still very young. I mean, he'll be back from injury. You don't know exactly what you're going to get from him. That's why I think maybe signing Cresswell would be a good option as that's like your fourth center back in a 3 center back setup. So that would be the defense. I don't think it's overkill to sign Cresswell. Looking at that, maybe some people would say, oh, you've got 6 center backs for 3 positions. You're always going to have at least 2 missing out, probably for the majority of it. But I think with the amount of games you would expect Liverpool to play and the amount of rotation you would hopefully expect from a top team, as we've seen with Arsenal, they've been able to manage that squad very, very well. I would hope that Liverpool replicate that a little bit, and just signing that one extra quality center back to back up that that back three, the first string back three. That's what I meant to say. I think that would be good. Now the midfield, obviously, we're now playing with wingbacks. Frimpong would probably be the starter. Kirkez, I think, would be the starter. And a player I haven't mentioned backing Kirkez up would be Grimaldo. I think I need to look at his contract situation, but I think he's like nearing the end. And this would only be if Robertson left. I think if we were able to sign Robertson for another year, I think that would be the better alternative. But assuming that he leaves, I don't think we go and sign another young wingback. I think it's a case of who's on the market that we can get for, I don't know, like 25 million. That would be good. Maybe Grimaldo would cost more than that. I'm not entirely sure, but who's in that kind of rough range that you don't need to spend 60, 70 million pounds on. That's going to be fine as a backup to potential starter for 2 to 3 years. Grimaldo, I think, just turned 30, or maybe he's 29. So I think he perfectly fits that role. I'd be curious to see what his contract situation's like. If he recently signed a big deal, then maybe somebody in the Grimaldo mold. But I think Grimaldo is kind of like what I think a lot of people thought that Robertson would have been like the perfect, what am I trying to say? Like the perfect person to learn from. But we've seen Kirkez basically starting from the beginning of the season. So I think in this type of setup, it would be good to go back to maybe Grimaldo starts next season and Kirkez is actually learning from somebody who Xabi Alonso has played with before and had great success with, somebody like Grimaldo. So that would be my recommendation for a backup / starting left wing back that Kirkez could hopefully learn from. I don't think you want to go and sign another young guy. I think that would just be creating an issue like we saw here. Isaac and Ekitike, they're just way too similar in age. There's only one position realistically for them, in at least under slot. So that would be my recommendation. I've also got, I've already talked about Hayden Hackney as like a backup for these guys. Jones, I think you keep him as well. Again, homegrown is a big issue. Bradley, I think perfectly good backup / starter. I think it would be kind of a similar situation to Kirkez and Grimaldo, but obviously their ages are a little bit too similar for me. And I think ultimately one is going to have to go. Both are homegrown, by the way, just to remember that. So I thought Frimpong was a good signing for that reason as well. So yeah, I think that's a solid midfield. Obviously, we're losing out. Endo would be leaving and McAllister would be leaving in this hypothetical world. I think you would also have Trey Neone as one of the backups as well. You can, put that there, whatever. But I think that's sufficient cover for the midfield. And I think I didn't highlight Anderson. What am I thinking? I think with Anderson, that's a team you can kind of build around for years to come. So I think Anderson would be worth the 100 million or whatever they've been quoting, kind of like a Declan Rice. I'm not saying they're the same or similar or anything like that, but if they're going for similar amounts of fees, I think you could justify that by saying he's homegrown. There's really nobody on the market like him. It's a huge area of need, as we've seen from this season, and in this formation, I think it's also critical. We just need a defensive-minded center midfielder that's got the grit, that's got the industry to work alongside Gravenberch, who's got a little bit more nuance to him, got a little bit more flair. And I love Gravenberch. I think he's worth the extra cost you're getting with Anderson to maybe accommodate some of his deficiencies, which I think are not that much. I still think he's great defensively as well, but I think to balance that out, I think you need an Anderson. You don't need a Warden. So that's the midfield 4. Then looking at the 2 10s that you would have in this 3-4-3 or 3-4-2-1 situation, Szoboszlai and Wirtz are just like the 2 obvious picks. They're 2 10s. We signed Wirtz. We need to find a place for him. He's very natural in this position. And backing him up, I would say, Gakpo, now it's time for you to be a second string player. You can rotate with Wirtz and Szoboszlai and Ekitike and Isaac, but I think this is a much better starting 11 than what we currently have. Probably the interesting bit here is that I think Harvey Elliott would be perfect, literally perfect for a 3-4-2-1 type system. I think they've tried to play him on the wing. They've tried to play him as a 10. I think playing as a set, like 2 10s for Harvey Elliott would be literally a perfect role. So I think Harvey Elliott would get a lot of work in this position. I would hope with bringing Xabi Alonso in, he could recognize that Harvey Elliott is amazing and has qualities that could be very well suited to this formation and squad utilization, etc. So that would be my recommendation. And then for the strikers, I think we're just in this situation. We bought Ekitike, we bought Isak. They're just going to have to fight it out. I think some positives with playing this type of formation compared to under slot, where we're playing primarily a 4-2-3-1, is that I don't think it's impossible. Now, quick tangent. Everyone who is saying when we signed Ekitike that he could play left wing, it just has not worked out at all. We have not seen Ekitike playing left wing at all whatsoever, even with Isak in the team. When we've seen them together, it was like a 4-2-2-2, not a 4-2-3-1 with Isak playing the wing. I don't like that at all. I don't think he's suited to that at all. However, in this formation, I think we could possibly see a situation where Ekitike is playing one of the 10 roles. Not like as a traditional 10, but more as like a second striker type position. So I think that's one of the benefits to having Xabi Alonso in here. My voice is absolutely gone. How long have we been recording? This is absolutely nuts, but this is what you get for a bonus episode, baby. If anybody is still watching, you're a real fan there, but yeah. So reiterating, Ekitike, I think, does actually kind of work as like a second striker in this, or you flip it and you have, maybe Szoboszlai plays back here, Wirtz plays in like a central 10 position, and then you play both Ekitike and Isak. I think you could flip that triangle and that works as well. So under Xabi Alonso, what we would see is that we really don't need, like, Salah is gone in this situation. We don't need to sign an Elise or somebody of that caliber to have a functioning starting 11. We're not starting Gakpo anymore. Those days are over, hopefully under Xabi Alonso. But the positions of need would be center back, center defensive midfielder, which I think would still be the case under Arne Slot next season anyways, and really just replacing players who are leaving. So I think from a cost standpoint, this is far less than what we would need under Arne Slot next summer. Like, let's play the hypothetical out here. We would probably need a left winger and a right winger. I think even that alone probably dwarfs what we need to pay for Schlotterbeck and Anderson, because we're probably not getting the quality that we need for under 70 million for each position. So we would definitely, in my opinion, definitely need a left winger and a right winger. I think we would probably need at least a left back, like an actual left back, not a left winger, and an actual right back, not a right wing back. And we would need a center defensive midfielder and probably backup as well. So I think the cost would probably be double or even potentially triple if we were to keep Arne Slot, and obviously a half or a third if we were to go get Xabi Alonso, who's there. I've talked a lot. My voice is completely gone. I have no idea how long this recording is going for. So let's end it there. Those are all of my thoughts. Let's try to sum it up with something poignant, which probably will end up just being me rambling more. Okay, those are all of my thoughts regarding the Liverpool situation. This has been very cathartic for me. I don't know how often these types of videos and podcasts will be out. They're just random, and obviously I'm not doing this for any profit. I make no money from this, so more content does not mean more good for me. It's just a creative outlet. I like to get on the mic and talk, even if I talk so long that my voice sounds like ass now. But if you do enjoy this kind of content, I don't know if it would warrant making a second channel just to talk about Liverpool from my perspective. I can talk about them every week almost, especially when they've been so bad. But yeah, I like doing this kind of thing. Maybe just a general Premier League channel instead of a fantasy Premier League channel. But yeah, just to reiterate, we'll be back with more FPL content after Game Week 31 ends. I'll do a quick reaction to that. There's going to be a lot. There's probably going to be a few extra podcasts and videos in there because we're going to have to do a wild card video podcast. So a lot more to come for FPL. Let me know what your thoughts are with the Liverpool situation. Do you agree? Do you completely disagree? Where am I falling off the face of the earth in terms of logic here? So let me know. Very curious to hear y'all's thoughts, and I'll see you next time.